Hello, everybody. So I finally started my YouTube channel, which I called In a Nutshell. And 2 days ago, I published my first video in Italian. So I thought I might do it in English as well. The title in English would be Lights and Shadows of a Special Friendship. The friendship I'm talking about is the one between James Joyce and Italo Svevo. A relationship about which scholars have been wondering for a long time, trying to understand its real essence and the importance it had for both their private and professional lives as authors. What strikes us the most is at first how different these two people are. James Joyce was Irish. He was 21 years younger than Svevo. He was raised as a Catholic. He was constantly penniless, always owing money to somebody. He never worked properly, with the exception of the English lessons he gave. As soon as he could, he lived with the help of mentors and admirers. He had probably caught a very serious venereal disease in one of Dublin's brothels. And in any case, he was very confident, always very confident about his own talent as a writer. On the other hand, Italo Svevo, whose real name was Aaron Hector Schmitz, was from Trieste. He belonged to a Jewish family of Hungarian origins. And when he met Joyce in 1907, he was already a very successful and hardworking businessman. Who had published 2 books some years before, who had gone basically unnoticed. So he was pretty doubtful about his own talent as a writer. Joyce settled in Trieste in 1905. We know that he started to go to Villa Veneziani in 1907 to teach Mr. Schmitz, also known as Italo Svevo, some English. Why? Because Mr. Schmitz had married Livia Veneziani, the daughter of Gioacchino Veneziani, a famous and important entrepreneur and factory owner here in Trieste, who produced a paint for ships, an anti-fouling paint, which was very effective and very successful. They even produced it in England. They had a branch near London where they produced it, and they sold it to the Royal Navy as well. So Mr. Schmitz often went to England and needed to improve his language skills in English. He spoke Italian. We must remember that at the time Trieste was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So German was very important here, and it was spoken, and Svevo spoke it very well, also because he studied it in Germany. But he needed to improve his English language skills for business reasons. During these lessons, often Livia Veneziani attended too. They spoke about many things, about current affairs, also about literature. One day, probably in the spring of 1907, Joyce read to them, to the Schmitz, a short novel of his that he had just completed, and that would become the last of his collection, Dubliners. The short story was The Dead. And Mrs. Veneziani was so impressed, was so moved by this reading, that she went out into the garden, she picked up some roses, and she gave them to the author of this masterpiece to compliment him on his achievement. And Svevo picked up all his courage and gave him his 2 books to read, the books that he had published some years before at his own expense and that had not been successful. At first, Joyce was surprised. He even told his brother Stanislaus, Signor Schmitz gave me these 2 books, I wonder what they are. But when he finished reading them, he was amazed. And he told Svevo, do you realize that you are a neglected writer? There are parts in Senilità that not even Anatole France could have written better. This, according to Livia Veneziani, was a spark that ignited the self-confidence that her husband badly needed. Years later, in 1923, when Italo Svevo published La coscienza di Zeno, again at his own expenses, again without any success, he sent it to Joyce, who was then living in France, in Paris, who had published 1 year before in Paris his masterpiece Ulysses. Svevo sent him his La coscienza di Zeno, and Joyce's reaction was enthusiastic. He told him, "Why are you sad?" He asked him, "Why are you sad? Why are you depressed? Don't you realize this is the best thing you've written so far? This is very good." And of course, he showed La coscienza to his friends Larbeau and Crémieux, and from that moment on, the rest is history. And Svevo and all his work became known internationally and became a literary case. And a very important one. So, as I said, scholars have been asking, have been wondering, what was this friendship about? What was the real essence of their friendship? Was it really an intimate relationship, or just an acquaintance based on the common passion of literature? It's not easy to understand and to answer this question. Of course, also Joyce doesn't make it easy for us when, after Svevo's death, refuses to write the introduction to the English version of Senilità, which had become As a Man Grows Old. Livia Veneziani asked him to do so, but he refused. And he told his brother, Stanislaus, "Why should I do it? I've never done something of the kind. I've never written introduction to some other people's work. Why should I start now?" And in any case, when I went to Villa Veneziani, it was always as a worker, never as a guest. So, what was he trying to do here? He was probably, according to a very famous scholar, Renzo Crivelli, he was probably trying to take some little revenge. Livia Veneziani had shown a very snobbish attitude on more than one occasion, particularly towards Nora Barnacle, Joyce's partner of a lifetime, who then eventually became also his wife. They belonged to different social classes. Nora often didn't have the money to dress properly, and on the other hand, Livia Veneziani was a lady, a well-to-do lady from Trieste. And when she met Nora, apparently more than once she pretended she didn't see her and she didn't say hello. So probably Nora felt looked down upon and must have, this must have been very unpleasant. And this is probably something that Joyce never forgot and never forgave. Of course, this is an assumption, but it sounds as a good one. There are instances, though, that make us think that the relationship was also on intimate terms, despite the gap, the social gap between them. For example, Svevo often lent him money. He often paid lessons in advance to enable Joyce to, for example, to go to Ireland on an occasion that what had happened when he wanted to join Nora that had gone to Galway. Svevo paid for, I think, 12 lessons or many lessons in advance to enable him to join Nora in Ireland. And on that occasion, he even left a dog. Joyce left a dog to Italo Svevo, asking him to look after the dog that eventually turned out to be a female dog and produced some puppies. So there is also a picture that has been in the museum here in Trieste, the Svevo and Joyce Museum here in Trieste, but that last year was enlarged and it reached the dimension of a poster, and it was presented in last year Bloomsday here in Trieste, showing some men playing some bocce game, the game of this game of bowling that was very popular and that was often played at Villa Veneziani during festivities and on Sundays. And in this picture, we can see Italo Svevo, Giochino Veneziani, and a man that resembles very much James Joyce. It looks like another picture of his previous picture in 1904, the same posture, the same physical features, same chin. Really, during last year Bloomsday, when we saw the posters, we could appreciate a really uncanny resemblance between the two. And also, scholars have been underlying the fact that if it's true that without Joyce we probably wouldn't be talking about Svevo, it's also true that also Svevo was important for Joyce. For example, the character of Leopold Bloom in Ulysses, the Jewish outsider in Ulysses, owes a lot to Italo Svevo, who was his main model. And Joyce has always admitted to that. Also, Svevo knew it, and he liked Poldi very much. He found him very comical. And in fact, there is an element in Ulysses and also in Finnegan's that maybe is not as much present in his previous work. I'm thinking about Dubliners and Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And this element becomes essential in Joyce's later work, and his irony. For example, the way Poldi thinks about what happens around him, how he analyzes facts, is a way in which irony is always present, a very human and humane, I would say, and often irreverent irony, which was present in Svevo's work, but also in the way he acted. It was a very peculiar trait of his personality, in the way he lived, in the way he died. When he died on his deathbed, he asked for a cigarette. He had a very important addiction to smoking, as his character Zeno Cosini in La Coscienza di Zeno. And when they refused to give it to him, he said, "Oh, what a pity. This would really have been my last one." And Svevo used irony a lot. And this is something that probably made the two authors closer. They met in 1907. They kept in touch all the time. First, when Joyce lived in Trieste, she lived in Trieste for almost 11 years altogether, until the death of Svevo in 1928. And we must realize that there are many instances that despite the social gap between them, they were always united by a mutual affection, mutual admiration, and also a common vision. And the common need, the common urge to find a way of writing that would enable them to express the deeper realities of our humanity and of our psyche, of human psyche, in a way that was new then, but never ceases to inspire us and surprise us. And it's very modern even today. Thank you for watching.